My name is Jake Morrison, and I'm a freelance writer. In September 2024, I rented a secluded cabin in the Colorado mountains through Airbnb for a 2-week writing retreat. I needed total silence to finish my novel, and the property seemed perfect, located 45 minutes from the nearest town, surrounded by century-old pine trees with no neighbors for miles. The cabin was rustic but cozy, built in the 1960s by a retired couple who used it as a summer home. The current owner, a man named Robert Chen, had inherited the property from his in-laws and turned it into a vacation rental. During our phone conversation, he mentioned he rarely visited the place. "Too many bad memories," were his exact words. I arrived on a Thursday afternoon under a grey sky threatening snow. The cabin had a rustic charm with exposed wooden beams and a stone fireplace, but there was something in the air that unsettled me. A faintly sweet, sickly smell like rotting fruit seemed to be coming from the floorboards. I spent the first 2 days setting up my workspace and getting used to the isolation. The internet was slow but functional, and the silence was exactly what I needed. But on the third night, while moving some furniture to create a better writing setup, I discovered something that would change my entire stay. I was dragging a heavy armchair when I noticed one of the floorboards was slightly raised. When I bent down to check, I realized it wasn't just a loose board. It was an entire section of the floor, disguised to look like part of the original hardwood. I pulled it up and revealed a square trapdoor roughly 3 feet by 3 feet. There were rusty hinges on one side and a metal handle on the other. The sweet smell I had noticed since arriving was now much stronger, pouring straight out of the opening. I grabbed my phone's flashlight and pointed it down. There was a wooden staircase descending into darkness, vanishing beyond the reach of the beam. The walls looked like compacted dirt, as if someone had dug a tunnel or makeshift basement beneath the cabin. My first reaction was curiosity. As a writer, I'm always on the lookout for interesting stories, and a hidden space beneath a remote cabin definitely qualified. But there was something about that darkness that made me hesitate. The air rising from the hole was icy, much colder than the rest of the cabin, and carried that same nauseatingly sweet smell. I decided to investigate the next day with natural light and better prep. I closed the trapdoor and moved the armchair back over it, but I couldn't stop thinking about what might be down there. The next morning, I called Robert Chen to ask about the trapdoor. His reaction was odd. Too long a pause, followed by a nervous reply. "Oh, it's just an old basement. The previous owners used it for storing preserves. Nothing interesting down there, Jake." "Actually, I'd recommend you don't go down. The floorboards might be rotted, and it's dangerous." But his voice trembled when he said that, and I could tell he was hiding something. That afternoon, I got ready. I grabbed a strong flashlight I had brought for emergencies, put on warmer clothes, and opened the voice recording app on my phone. If there was something interesting down there, I wanted to document it. I opened the trapdoor again. The sweet smell was even stronger now, almost unbearable. I began descending the wooden steps, testing each one before putting my full weight on it. The wood was surprisingly solid despite its aged look. After descending about 10 feet, my feet touched the dirt floor. I aimed the flashlight around and saw that I was in a much larger underground chamber than I expected. The ceiling was low, forcing me to hunch slightly, but the space stretched in several directions, forming a network of tunnels. The walls were compacted earth, reinforced with wooden planks in some areas. There were crude shelves along the walls, but instead of jars of preserves, they held glass containers filled with dark liquids I couldn't identify. That's when I heard it for the first time. A low, almost imperceptible sound. A soft hiss, like air slowly escaping from a punctured tire. But there was something organic about it, something that made my skin crawl. The sound seemed to come from deeper within the tunnels, echoing off the dirt walls. I pointed the flashlight in that direction, but the beam vanished into the dark corridors that branched out in multiple directions. "Hello?" I called, my voice sounding oddly muffled in the underground space. The hissing stopped instantly. The silence that followed was even more unsettling than the original sound. It was as if something was down there, something that had stopped moving the moment it realized I was there. I rushed up from the underground basement, my heart pounding. The silence that followed my call had been more disturbing than the hissing itself. It was as if something down there was aware of my presence and had deliberately stopped moving. I shut the trapdoor and spent the rest of the afternoon trying to focus on writing, but it was impossible. My mind kept returning to those dark tunnels and the strange sound I'd heard. I decided to research the property's history. Using the cabin's slow internet, I uncovered some unsettling facts. The property had been built in 1962 by a couple named Harold and Martha Whitman. Harold was a retired veterinarian who had specialized in reptiles during his career. Martha was a biologist who had worked in herpetology, the study of snakes and lizards. But what really caught my attention was a newspaper article from 1978. Harold Whitman had mysteriously disappeared from the property. His wife Martha reported to the police that he had gone down to his underground lab to check on his specimens and never came back. The police investigated but found no evidence of a crime and no sign of Harold's body. Martha continued living in the cabin alone until her death in 1995. Neighbors said she became reclusive and paranoid, constantly talking about underground guardians that protected the property. After her death, the property changed hands several times before ending up with Robert Chen's in-laws. That night, around 11 p.m., I heard it again. The hissing was louder now, and it seemed to be coming from directly beneath the floor where I was sitting. It was no longer a continuous sound, short, rhythmic bursts like something breathing heavily. I grabbed my phone and started recording. The sound was clearly audible through the floorboards, but there was something else. A soft dragging, like something large, moving through the underground tunnels. At 11:30 the sound stopped completely, but at 2:17 a.m. I was awakened by something far worse. Knocking. Someone or something was knocking from underneath the floor, directly beneath my bed. 3 slow knocks, a pause, then 3 more. The pattern repeated for exactly 7 minutes, then stopped abruptly. The next morning, I called Robert Chen again. This time, I was more direct. "Robert, I need to know the truth about what's in the basement. I'm hearing strange noises, and I found out the previous owners were herpetologists. What really happened here?" There was a long silence before he replied, his voice visibly tense. "Jake, I should have told you. My in-laws warned me about the noises. They said Harold Whitman kept exotic snakes down there, some very rare and dangerous species. When he disappeared, no one knew how many were left or if any were still alive. Can snakes even live that long? Some species can live for decades, Jake. And if they found a food source, rodents, small animals, they might have reproduced." My blood ran cold. "Are you saying there could be a colony of venomous snakes living under the cabin?" "I don't know for sure. No one's ever had the guts to properly investigate. That's why the rental price is so low. Most guests don't stay more than a night." I hung up, furious. He should have warned me about this before I arrived. But now I was here, and my curiosity as a writer was stronger than my fear. That afternoon, I prepared for a second descent. I ordered supplies online to be delivered to the nearest town: a powerful headlamp, thick gloves, tall leather boots, and a telescopic rod to keep anything dangerous at a distance. I also researched venomous snakes native to Colorado. Most were relatively harmless, but if Harold had truly kept exotic species, there could be much more dangerous ones down there. At 4 p.m., I descended into the basement again. This time, I was better prepared and determined to uncover the truth. The sweet smell was even stronger, almost unbearable. With the headlamp, I could see more details of the underground space. The shelves held not just jars of dark liquids, but also glass terrariums, some broken, others still intact. There were also rusted scientific instruments, microscopes, precision scales, and what looked like old refrigeration equipment. This had definitely been a lab. I followed the main tunnel, which extended about 60 feet before branching off in 3 directions. The walls showed signs of manual excavation. Shovel and pickaxe marks were visible in the packed earth. It was in the left tunnel that I found the first real evidence, a snakeskin. Not a small one, at least 6 feet long and as thick as my arm. The skin was relatively fresh, not dried out as it would have been if it were old. That meant there were living snakes down there, and they were much larger than I'd anticipated. That's when I heard the hissing again, much closer this time. It was coming from the right tunnel, accompanied by a dragging sound that made my skin crawl. I pointed my flashlight toward the noise and saw something that made my blood freeze. 2 glowing points in the darkness. Eyes. Eyes watching me from perhaps 30 feet away. And they were moving closer. Panic overtook me when I saw those 2 glowing points watching me in the darkness. My first instinct was to run, but something kept me frozen in place. The eyes didn't move, they just stared with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Slowly, I pointed the flashlight directly at the glowing eyes. What I saw made me question my own sanity. It was a serpent, but not like any snake I'd ever seen. It was at least 13 feet long and as thick as a tree trunk. Its scales shimmered in a pattern that seemed to change color depending on the light, at times dark green, then gold, then pitch black. But the most disturbing thing was its eyes. They were far too large for a snake, almost human in their expressiveness, and they glowed with an intelligence that made me feel as though I was being judged. The creature didn't move when the light hit it. It just kept watching me, its forked tongue slowly flicking in and out, as if tasting my scent in the air. Then I realized I wasn't alone with it. There was movement in the shadows around me, other shapes slithering at the edges of my flashlight's beam. More snakes, many more. I began to slowly back away, but the giant serpent started moving. It wasn't an aggressive movement, it was almost curious. It glided toward me with a fluid grace that was both mesmerizing and terrifying. "Stay calm, Jake," I whispered to myself. "Slow movements, don't provoke it." But as I took another step back, my foot landed on something soft. I looked down and saw I had stepped on another snake, smaller but still the size of a boa. It hissed loudly, a high-pitched sound that echoed through the tunnels. Immediately all the other snakes began to move. The sound of scales scraping against dirt became deafening. They were coming from every direction, from side tunnels, from holes in the walls I hadn't noticed, even from the ceiling. The giant serpent picked up speed. Its eyes never left mine, and now I could see its mouth slightly open, revealing fangs the size of kitchen knives. I ran. I stumbled and staggered through the dark tunnels, the light from my flashlight bouncing wildly as I tried to find my way back to the stairs. Behind me, the sound of dozens of snakes giving chase was like an avalanche of scales and muscle. I reached the main chamber and saw the staircase. I had never been so relieved in my life. I began climbing 2 steps at a time, but halfway up, I felt something brush against my leg. I looked down and saw the giant serpent at the base of the stairs. It had reared up, balancing on its tail, and its head was now level with my feet. Its eyes gleamed with what I could only describe as amusement. "You shouldn't have come here," a voice whispered. I froze. The voice hadn't come from any direction, or rather, it came from all directions at once. It was as if the very walls were speaking. Who's talking?" I stammered. "We are," the voice replied. "We who guard Harold's secrets, we who keep his experiments alive." I looked at the giant serpent. Its mouth wasn't moving, but somehow I knew the voice was coming from it. "Harold Whitman created you?" "Harold set us free," the voice hissed. "He brought us from distant lands, gave us a home, fed us, studied us. And when the time came, he joined us." "Joined you? What does that mean?" The giant snake tilted its head, a disturbingly human gesture. Harold realized there was something greater than human science. He discovered we were not mere animals. We are older, wiser. And when he tasted our essence, the creature paused, flicking its tongue again to sample the air. He became part of our family, forever. I felt my stomach turn. Where is Harold now? Harold is with us. Harold is us. And you, Jake Morrison, will be next. The serpent began to climb the stairs. Its movements defied logic. It scaled the steps like a person, using its tail to push itself up while keeping its upper body upright. I scrambled to the top and slammed the trapdoor shut, throwing all my weight on it. I could hear thumping from below and the sound of claws or scales scraping against the wood. I grabbed my phone and called Robert Chen. He answered on the first ring, as if he'd been waiting. "Jake, you went down there, didn't you?" "Robert, there are giant snakes in the basement. They talk. They told me Harold Whitman is still alive." There was a long silence. Then Robert let out a heavy sigh. "Jake, I need to tell you the truth. Harold Whitman was my father-in-law. He didn't disappear in 1978. He transformed." "Transformed into what?" "He was experimenting with venom from exotic snakes, trying to create a serum that could extend human life, but something went wrong. The serum didn't just prolong his life, it changed his essence. He became something between man and serpent." The pounding on the trapdoor grew louder. "Robert, I need to get out of here, now." "Jake, listen carefully. You can't just leave. They've caught your scent. They'll follow you. The only way to break the connection is—" The line went dead. The trapdoor began to open. The trapdoor opened slowly, and the giant serpent emerged with a fluid grace that defied the laws of physics. Its eyes glowed with their own light in the dim cabin, and now I could see details that made me question everything I thought I knew about reality. Its skin wasn't just scaly, there were patterns that moved, as if ancient symbols were constantly being rewritten across its surface. And when it rose fully upright, I realized it stood nearly 10 feet tall, balanced on its tail. "Jake Morrison!" it hissed, its voice echoing directly inside my mind. "You've read about us. You know we are more than animals. We are guardians of ancestral knowledge." I backed against the wall, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it echo through the cabin. "What do you want from me?" "We want you to understand," it replied, slithering toward me. Harold understood. He discovered we didn't come from distant lands. We've always been here, beneath the earth, waiting. He only awakened us. Other serpents began to emerge from the trapdoor. Some were small, the size of regular snakes, but others were nearly as massive as the first. All of them had those same intelligent, glowing eyes that made me feel as if I were being judged by a council of ancient beings. "Did you kill Harold?" The giant serpent tilted its head, almost as if it was smiling. "Kill him?" "No, Jake. We freed him. Harold was trapped in a fragile human body limited by a small human mind. We helped him transcend." "Where is he now?" "Harold is here," it hissed, and its eyes glowed brighter. "Harold is me. I am Harold. We are Harold." My blood froze. The creature before me wasn't just a serpent. It was Harold Whitman, transformed into something that was neither human nor animal, but something entirely other. "The serum you created, it did this to you?" "The serum was only the catalyst," Harold Serpent replied. "I discovered that certain snake venoms carry not just toxins, but memories of ancient eras of lost knowledge. When I injected myself with a combination of these venoms, I didn't just extend my life, I accessed millions of years of reptilian wisdom." He slithered closer, and now I could feel the heat radiating from his body. But the physical transformation was only a side effect. The real gift was the expanded consciousness. "I can see through time, Jake. I can see the past and the future, and I saw you coming." "You knew I would come?" "I orchestrated it," he hissed, his eyes glowing with satisfaction. "Robert Chen is my son-in-law, but he doesn't know the full truth. I influence his choices. I make sure he selects guests carefully. Writers are the best. You have open minds, insatiable curiosity. You're the most fit for the transformation. My stomach turned. How many others? You will be the 12th, Harold said. Each one brought unique abilities, unique perspectives. Together we're creating a new consciousness, a fusion of ancient serpent wisdom and human creativity. The other serpents were circling the room now, blocking every possible exit. Some were clearly once human. I could see traces of human features in their eyes, in the way they moved. I won't let you transform me, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. You don't have a choice, Harold hissed. The process has already begun. Since you breathed the air in the basement, since you touched the skin we left for you, you've been changing. You feel it, don't you? The transformation starting? With horror, I realized he was right. My skin was tingling, especially on my hands and face. I looked at my palms and saw tiny scales beginning to form. Don't fight it, Harold whispered, his voice almost gentle now. The transformation is a gift. You'll keep your mind, your memories, but gain so much more. Knowledge lost to mankind for millennia, the ability to see through the illusions that limit human perception. My legs began to give out. The scales were spreading along my arms and my vision was shifting, becoming sharper, more vibrant. I could see color spectrums I'd never noticed before. Jake, Harold hissed, now only inches from me. Stop resisting. Embrace what you are becoming. Join our family. But then I remembered something Robert had said before the call dropped. The only way to break the connection is... I grabbed my phone and called Robert again. He answered instantly. Jake, are you still human? For now, I said, my voice already sounding different. You were going to tell me how to break the connection. Fire, he yelled. Harold was always afraid of fire. It's the only thing that can stop the transformation, but you have to move fast. I looked at the stone fireplace. There was dry wood stacked beside it and matches on the shelf. Harold realized what I was about to do and let out a sharp, terrified hiss. No! He screamed, his voice losing its supernatural calm. You don't understand. You're destroying centuries of knowledge. I ran to the fireplace and lit the matches. The flames quickly spread through the dry wood. Harold and the other serpents recoiled, hissing in panic. I grabbed a burning log and pointed it toward them. Stay away from me! Jake, you're making a terrible mistake, Harold hissed, but his voice was weakening now. Without us, you'll never know the truth about what truly rules this world. I watched as the scales on my skin began to fade. The transformation was reversing. I held the fire between me and the serpents as I moved toward the door. You may leave this time, Harold hissed, his form beginning to dissolve into shadow. But we will always be here, and part of you will always belong to us. I ran from the cabin and didn't stop driving until I reached the nearest town. I never returned to Colorado. But Harold was right about one thing. Even now, months later, I sometimes wake up in the middle of the night and feel my skin tingling. And when I look in the mirror for just a split second, I see scales where human skin should be. The transformation may have been interrupted, but it was never completely undone. And I know that one day, it will finish what it started. Sometimes, late at night, I hear Harold hissing my name on the wind. And with each passing day, the call grows stronger. If you made it this far, it means you're brave enough to face true terror. These real Airbnb stories are just the beginning. We've got hundreds of even more disturbing accounts waiting for you. Real haunted house stories, documented paranormal experiences, guests who never came back, video evidence, science can't explain. Subscribe now and hit the bell so you don't miss a single chilling tale. Smash that like button if this story gave you goosebumps. Comment and tell us which part scared you the most. Share this with someone bold enough to watch it. We'll see you in the next nightmare, if you dare.